Hello and welcome to this episode of Star Wars Universe Podcast. Today we're talking about the Clone Wars, Season 3, Episodes 8, 9, 10, and 11. We're talking about galactic banking and war profiteering. We're talking about internal Senate negotiations. And we're talking about why do the people at the farmers market on Coruscant have such bad business ethics? All that and more after this commercial break we have no control over. Welcome back. My name is Matthew. I'm your host. I'm joined as always for our discussions of the Clone Wars by Riki and Sarah Hayashi. How you folks doing tonight?
Hello.
Good evening.
We're doing okay. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. We are. I know we may not all be on the same side as this, but I think these are the couple of the episodes we're going to get in here are some of my absolute favorites in the show. I'm actually guessing that. Sarah, at least, you may have also an absolute favorite coming up in these four that might be very different from the ones that I have.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I totally agree with you. I think some of these episodes are my absolute favorites, and some I really don't like at all, and I feel like we're going to be the exact opposite.
That's fine. It means there's always going to be someone having something positive to say about one of the episodes, so there you go. And Riki, what about you? What's your take on this little bit of Clone Wars we got tonight?
Well, there's a lot of interesting stuff. And I actually ordered a book from the library based on watching these episodes because there's a Jedi character here who has a novel that I'm kind of interested in. So we'll get to
nice. That. Is it the one that Obi-Wan is so very fond of?
Yes.
Nice. I'll look forward to hearing about that. And the two episodes we have are in pretty much episode arcs. But I think at least these first two are a little bit. Actually, no, I think we can talk about all of them the two of them at the same time. So, first we have episodes 8 and 9. Episodes 8 is Evil Plans, and it does actually start with the narrator saying, Evil Plans!
Evil Plans!
While on an important shopping trip to Coruscant, 3PO and R2-D2 are kidnapped by the sinister bounty hunter Cad Bane in his dastardly plot to free Zero the Hutt. There's all sorts of, things that happen. There's a droid massage hall that C-3PO is sent to. There's apparently one particular fruit that needs to be happen because dining is both very important, but also catering companies in Coruscant don't seem to exist. But anyway, they go off, they have adventures, and Cad Bane eventually winds up getting what he needs to free Zero the Hutt. So we find out that Zero the Hutt is in possession of, incriminating evidence, and that's why the Hutts all want to keep him safe. It's a podcast, so you can't see my finger quotes, but hopefully you can hear them in my voice. Zero the Hutt is placed under the custody of the Hutt Council. When Cad Bane is sent to hunt down Zero, he learns that Jedi Masters Obi-Wan and Quirlan Vos are searching for Zero too. That, I think, leaves out the most important parts of the episode, which is basically we get a 1920s gangster mall romance between Zero and his sweetie, which does, however, end in betrayal and tragedy. So yeah, what's your all take on these episodes?
Yeah, well, I think we should also mention these two episodes bookend an episode from season 1, Hostage Crisis, where we first meet, I think, Cad Bane and Zero. So yeah, Evil Plans was immediately before, and then the next one, Hunt for Zero, is immediately afterwards.
Right.
I really, really, really like these episodes, and I feel like you guys don't.
I found them charming.
Okay.
I feel like the first time I saw them, I was kind of like, really? But then when I let myself, I think the second episode is much better. The first episode, I'm really not down for the catering stuff on, let me just actually tell this quick story. So an essential part of this episode is that Padme is trying to serve this elegant dinner with a perfect dessert to a senator, and in order to get him to vote the way they want. I used to be a lobbyist. I used to work in politics. I used to host dinners like this quite often and be part of hosting them quite often. There was one time where I was traveling. I was in West Virginia. The person who was leading the lobbying organization there was hosting the dinner. And she, it turned out, got very into the conversation, completely burned the dinner. We had to order pizzas. She was very embarrassed. And they all voted for the bill the way we wanted them to. So I'm not quite sure I understand Coruscant politics, that if you don't get the dessert just right, they don't vote for your bill. But yeah, what was your take, Riki, on the culinary and other political machinations of this episode?
Well, I think it's less about the actual food and more showing that you know and understand this person.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are familiar enough that, this is your favorite dessert cake.
Right.
And then they'll be like, oh, how did you know?
It's the brown
how lovely.
M&Ms, right?
Yeah, attention to detail.
Attention to detail. And I think it's also just showing, like, Padme is mega stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, she's put 3PO, she's put 3PO as her protocol droid in charge of overseeing some of this stuff. And clearly 3PO wants his buddy R2 included and puts R2 in charge of, like, securing this most precious fruit. And R2 just, like, does not give a poop about this at all. Doesn't do it. 3PO's all up in arms. R2's kind of like, I'm an astromech. Who the F cares?
I pilot starships.
Yeah.
Why am I procuring fruit?
Yeah. And then Anakin sends them out because it's like, you guys didn't get this fruit. Go make it right. And
for my friend.
Yeah, for my yep.
Yep.
Actually, 3PO knows, right?
Must.
He's there all the time. So
I mean,
he must
3PO
know.
knows. And okay, when Anakin is lovelorn and not sure, of course he's going to pour his heart out to R2. Like,
Sure.
R2 has been Anakin's therapist for years now.
Sure. Well, R2 knows everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Popular
also true.
fan theory, R2-D2 is the embodiment of the Force.
I love it.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Like, I could see 3PO being oblivious to it just because, like, well, that's against protocol, so why? Clearly that's not happening.
Nice 3PO arms.
Yeah, because it's a podcast. You couldn't see my 3PO arms, so I
Nice. We can hear them in your voice, though.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I think, and I don't mean to focus on it too much. It and the rest of the story gets a little more interesting, but the whole thing just made no sense to me, especially when, okay, there's only 4 of these fruit left in this entire market, I guess. So those he claims on Coruscant. Sure,
yeah, I
maybe.
feel like there's probably not, but you're gonna talk about this in a second, I assume.
But also, like, if I go to a farmer's market
Mm-hmm.
and the person tells me here's the price, and then they realize I really want something, and so they jack the price up by 8 times, I'm probably posting on Yelp that people shouldn't go to that farmer's market anymore.
Sure, but if you were neurotic AF 3PO and you're like, oh dear, we need this fruit. R2, how much money do we have? Is that a
Never
better
tell
statement?
people how much money you have.
Yeah, and like R2 doesn't want to do it. R2 doesn't want to pull out the credits, but like 3PO is all like, Master Anakin is relying on us. Sorry for the bad 3PO impressions, but yeah, and it's so weird. Like these 4 fruit just like go right on top of the cake, and then you send the cake out, which is like, and also to your point, they don't seem very rare because R2 and 3PO drop them in their spa/kidnap adventure.
Right.
And they're still
Twice.
there twice, yeah.
Twice.
And there's, I mean, like, I guess who would pick up, like, if you just saw a bag of fruit sitting on the street, maybe you would be like, no, I'll pass. But
But if it was actually rare fruit.
yeah, then you might be like, oh, holy shit, it was like jubja fruit or something like that. I forget.
Yeah. Jump fruit, something like that.
Yeah, so I feel like this market guy was just shady and could spot that 3PO was maybe fresh off the market.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm just too naive and trusting, and I want to believe in the basic honor and dignity of a farmer's market seller. But I just
No. As soon as 3PO was out of line of sight, this guy was like pulling out another can of this fruit and like putting it on a shelf.
4 credits each. Yeah.
Oh, you're probably right. But at least then R2 just decides, okay, I'm done with all of this. I'm taking a spa day.
Yes.
Which I love. What was your thoughts on this? I'm guessing, Sarah, you were quite a fan too.
So when I first saw the episode, I was kind of like, this doesn't seem like R2. Like, why is he the one screwing up here? Because the reason the spa gets brought to their attention is, like, Cad Bane's robot pal shows up. Toto? Yes, yeah. Who, R.I.P. He shows up and is like, hey, look, there's a spa. Why don't you guys take a spa day? Because they want to kidnap 3PO and R2. Like, they recognize that it's the Senator's droid, and they're planning on breaking into the Senate. So it feels, I'm like, what? Why is R2 the one who's being fooled by this? But on the like second time watching, I was like, yeah, he's just done. He is just done with being told to go like get a fruit. That's ridiculous. He's dirty AF. He's gonna go take a spa day. And when I watched it through the first time, I thought that Cad Bane and his crew like owned this spa. Like it was some sort of like illicit mob spa, and that's why they were trying to get him to go there. No, clearly not. I was wrong. But it's just like a robot spa, which I guess makes sense. But yeah, because they don't even like R2 goes in and then they kidnap 3PO and they drop the food.
I'd written the same thing. Like, does Cad Bane run this place, or is it just a good coincidence? Because my brain didn't want to fully wrap itself around the idea that there's a droid spa. But when I found out there was, I was like, okay, we're divorcing ourselves from this portion of reality and just going with it. Cool, I mean, like, let's have fun with it.
He makes sense. I think it's just like a fancy car wash, kind of, right? Yeah, that's what it looked like.
Well,
it did kind of feel like that.
If you own droids, do you really want to also own a droid bath? What do they call it?
The oil thing. Yeah, I forget.
So, like in A New Hope, the Lars farm has one, right? And 3PO gets dunked in it and says, like, thank the maker.
Yeah.
But that's because they're on a farm isolated in nowhere, middle of nowhere, Tatooine.
Yeah.
But on Coruscant, yeah, like it's, I think a public droid spa makes more sense than each individual droid owner having to have a droid bath.
It definitely makes sense, and since they are sentient, you know, it's not just going to be a car wash. You want to make it a pleasurable experience for them.
Yeah, it was the two robo ladies like massaging R2's face was like a little much, but yeah.
I don't think he has pleasure sensors there, but you know, hey, fair enough. Let everybody enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny part was like, of all these things, like I think the actual plot for Cad Bane to get Zero out was the thing I cared about least. But is there much there to talk about?
Well, it also makes. I don't know. I don't think it makes sense. So, like Sarah said in the beginning, this one leads into the one where Cad Bane takes hostages at the Senate. So he needs to get like the blueprints or plans for the Senate building to be able to break in. And the only way to get that is to kidnap a senator's droids? Like, you are a professional criminal. Like, surely you can break into the public records department.
Right.
Well, and at first it was like, how do you even know that her droids are gonna like come out, right? So I think it might have just been like a kidnapping of opportunity. Like they saw that 3PO and R2 are exiting the building and they're like, oh hey,
he stole
that's
the
convenient.
fruit. R2 actually bought the fruit originally, and Cad Bane stole it from Amidala's kitchen.
That would not be the least convoluted plan in the Star Wars universe, to be fair.
Cad Bane had actually bought up all the fruit on every farmer's market in the planet.
We'll force them to go to this exact seller.
Yeah, and that's when
we'll ambush them. Because it's right next to the droid spa. So you need a fruit seller next to the droid spa.
I did like getting Cad Bane back. I feel like with Cad Bane and Hondo as kind of our two main bounty hunters, we're getting a nice balance where Hondo is like, he's kind of a lovable scoundrel, and you know he's always going to double cross you, but he's always going to be kind of incompetent about it, and he's always going to be kind of caught and like laugh a little bit at the end, and you're all going to be buddy. He's that buddy you just don't ever turn your back on.
Sure, yeah.
Whereas like Cad Bane, I think they managed to make actually fairly menacing and actually fairly this is a guy who's good at his job, who knows what he's doing, and he can get stuff done.
He tortures 3PO in this
and
episode.
R2, yeah, he tortures both of them.
Well, he doesn't torture R2.
Yeah,
R2
he does.
goes along voluntarily because 3PO is being tortured.
But he still like zaps him. Yeah. Anyway, they both get like electrocuted. And they like forcibly take the plans out of them and like wipe their memories of that encounter.
Yeah. Which is interesting that like they just wipe that little part of it. But
I feel like if they wiped too much, then it would be like suspicious. Like it's already weird. Anakin's like, what do you mean you don't know why you were late? But then Padme's just so happy that they've got the fruit that she's like, oh, you did an excellent job, 3PO. He's like, an excellent job. And then he doesn't shut up about that for a while.
Yep. Definitely true. Anything more on this, or shall we go on to the star-crossed lovers of Zero and Sai?
Yeah, Sai Snoodles.
Yep. All right. So in this episode, I kind of give the plot outline. Sarah, take it away. How do you feel about the love story here?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, as we mentioned in the episode where we first meet Zero, way back, I think it was season 1. It might have been season 2. Zero's like coded kind of effeminately, but he's got Size Noodles as his girlfriend. And I think I mentioned Zero reminded me a lot of like Curly from Of Mice and Men. And if all y'all aren't up on your Steinbeck, Curly is like a farm worker, and he keeps like Vaseline in his gloves to keep his hands soft, and he's got this like real sexy wife, but she's always kind of like flirting with everybody else on the farm. Mm-hmm. And like that's like, I think I can draw like the connections with Sai there, because she's like one of the dancers in Jabba's like pleasure hut.
She's a singer.
Yeah, they're still like the traditionally humanoid sexy Twi'lek ladies, which is another tangent.
There was a lot of interesting animation with those dancers, but go on.
So Size Noodles first appeared in Return of the Jedi in Jabba's palace as the long-legged, long-lipped female singer in the Max Rebo band.
Right.
Was she like CGI'd in, or was she?
No.
Okay.
In the original, I'm pretty sure she's a puppet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe in the new version she's CGI'd, and there's an additional CGI singer, the male singer, who like waves his tonsils at you like right in front of the camera.
Creepy.
Yeah. It's very clearly CGI'd in a way that the original was not. I think it's one of the worst additions to the extended edition.
No, come on. The ghost of Hayden Christensen.
That's fair. That's fair.
That didn't bother me quite as much, but I understand.
But yeah, I like that Sai has this like femme fatale quality. Like she hears that they've got Zero and they're keeping him safe in prison in Jabba's palace. Is that what it is? It's a palace? I guess it's a palace.
I think it's a palace, yeah.
So she like goes and she like seduces the Gamorrean guards and like gets in and like breaks Zero out, and they go off on the lam together.
The guards. She doesn't seduce them. She shows up and says, "By the way, Gardula, who's like the leader of the Hutt clan, Gardula wants to know which one of you's stronger."
Sure.
And they like look at each other and then start fighting. And then there's a third guard like in the inner chamber, and she says to him, "Oh no, look, those two are fighting. You should stop them." And he goes, and like her and Zero talk for like a minute or two through the bars, and then in the background you can see the guards fighting the whole time.
But she is kind of like Gardula wants to see which of y'all's strong.
Yeah.
And like show me how buff you are, gentlemen. Kind of.
There's definitely a flirty aspect, and I like the connection you make with Mice and Men and Curly. For me, though, it's definitely what I mentioned at the beginning. I definitely see this as like the 1920s gangster movie,
sure.
Or even the like whatever that age is, She's very much the mall figure, She's the kind of the guys and dolls girl who is just, she's always going to be there for her man, except if she ever feels slighted, then she's going to be, very dangerous. But just the very, like, slinky flirtatiousness of her was just perfect for that.
She's great. And, like, even there's a lot of, like, older gangster references just in the Hutt family. Like, there's one of the Hutt, I think, his name starts with an O. I forget. But he's got, like, the little mustache, like the Godfather-style mustache. So there's a whole bunch of, like, old gangster references throughout the whole Hutt clan, which I think is really neat. But yeah, what I really like about Size Noodles is, like, we very clearly understand that she is sexy, even though, like, and I don't want to, like, shame anybody for their tastes, but I don't think any human would regard Size Noodles as sexy. Like, she's an alien blobby creature. But,
long-legged, long-lipped.
Well, not long-lipped. Like, she's just got, like, a long, like, mouth protrusion thing, kind of like an insect.
It's like a beak, except there's lips at the end.
Yeah.
Her body type is not the thing that I think, we're socialized to find attractive.
Exactly.
She does not quite fit traditional beauty standards in the way that, like, I think you made a note of this, like, the Twi'leks are basically, like, attractive bipedal humanoid bodies with weird stuff on their heads.
Yes. Which I think is a lot of the attractive women in the Star Wars universe. It's just like human with weird thing on head.
Yeah. And I would say it's not just Star Wars. I think that's pretty.
Sci-fi tradition.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi thing.
And mostly it's because of actors.
Like, but in a cartoon, and I guess that like Clone Wars being based off of like a live action film. Can't go too far away from that. And I do like that we see, like, the gold bikinis on the dancers, but, like, that is a that is an awful lot of boobs and butt that we see in this episode.
Well, they're also in the Hutt clan chamber, there are dancers who are wearing like Hutt headdresses.
Very much like Las Vegas style showgirl headdresses.
Yeah,
but they're shaped
like bra and
to
panties.
look like
Yeah.
Hutts.
Yeah, which is weird.
It was strange.
But I love Sai so much, and I want more like weird. I think what I wrote down, like more sexy non-humanoids, right? Like I want other body types in there, and not even like just right, like because it doesn't make sense that someone like that a Hutt would find a human attractive. Just in the same way it doesn't make sense that a human would find a Hutt attractive. Like inner beauty, sure, but like physical attractiveness, right? Anyway. Yeah.
So you want a sexy tarantula lady?
Yes, give me a sexy Admiral Trench. Yeah. I am all for it. And not even like like I don't mean like give it big boobs and a big butt. I mean like what you did, like what we see here with Sai, show that there are other characters who clearly see this character as being sexy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it. Because like you said, it's not that they want us, you don't want them to anthropomorphize them and give them the sexual characteristics that we humans tend to find attractive. Whether that's the boobs and butties you mentioned, or like, the thick chest and the V shape, for our male type alien. But yeah, just to say like, look, different species have different secondary sex characteristics. And maybe for them, it's like the size of the beak, like, ooh, you got a really long beak. That's really hot, I don't know.
No, yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, the way she carries herself, I think, is just awesome. And we've been dancing around it. But do you want to tell the story of the sad star-crossed lovers, and where their story ends up?
Well, doesn't she like abandons him? So they go to meet his mother, which I have going from like one like size sexy to like Jabba's mom, who's just like a very, very big Hutt with a very, very deep voice, who apparently I found is like based on like a Blade character, which
I think Pearl was what you guys wrote.
Sure, yeah, Pearl from the 1998 superhero film Blade, which I have not seen. So they find out like where they borrow Jabba's mom's spaceship. They call it not spaceship. They call it what Star Wars calls spaceships, which I'm forgetting right now. It's been a rough week. Starship? Anyway, vehicle. Oh, gosh. And then they go to Zero's dad's grave, which is where Zero is hiding his journal, which is where he has all this dirt on the rest of the Hutt clan.
Yeah, it's the books. It's the books to put Al Capone away.
Yeah. And in traditional femme fatale fashion, a la Maltese Falcon. Right? Sai. Mm-hmm. It's like, you didn't come back for me, baby. You said you were going to come back for me. You ditched me. You ended up in prison. I'm taking this. I'm leaving you here. Peace.
Yeah. And she shoots him.
Yeah.
And then sells the books to Jabba.
Yeah. She's so great.
the Maltese Falcon part. Yeah, it's great. Because that's even more what she is. It's not just a gangster thing. It's that she's the dangerous dame from like the PI novels and stuff like that. And I love it because Zero is this guy. I mean, what happened is he took her for granted. He cut her loose when he had to advance whatever his scheme was. And now she's like, yeah, babe, I don't forget. I want revenge.
And even like when she was visiting him in jail, he had a very like, ooh, hey, baby, this could be very advantageous for me. I'm going to go along with it. Break me out, please. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's definitely a fun story. And I think just watching it this time, I just was very charmed by it. I could really enjoy it. And Riki, I think there's a whole other part of the story we haven't talked about, which is Obi-Wan and his new buddy. You want to talk about that?
I mean, this part I don't actually like. So the Jedi Council sends Obi-Wan to track down Cad Bane, who has broken Zero out. So he has like a 2-part mission. Get Zero back, throw him in jail, and capture Cad Bane for committing crimes. And they team Obi-Wan up with, not Anakin, but Jedi Master Quinlan Vos, who is basically a surfer dude hippie of a Jedi.
He literally, one of his lines is like, that's just your opinion, man.
It's so good. It tells me that even that this galaxy has a California.
Yeah.
And like, instead of waiting, when he first meets up with Obi-Wan, instead of waiting for his ship to land, he like jumps off and like does a flip and stuff. So he's just like impatient, like not your ideal Jedi. And in fact, so I was doing some reading on the character, and there was like this whole other storyline listed in his biography. I was like, I don't remember this. It's a novel called Dark Disciple. So it ends up, after all of this episode, Quinlan Vos is ordered by the Jedi Council to go undercover to try to assassinate Count Dooku. Ends up meeting Ventress, who I will not spoil what happens with her storyline, but they meet up, team up, fall in love, and a lot of stuff happens. So I have ordered this book. I'm going to check this book out of the library. Dark Disciple. It seems interesting because this character was interesting to me. Like, I don't like him as a person, but the fact that someone like this exists in the Jedi Order was interesting to me. So I want to find out more about, his adventures.
Yeah, like when they're on the trail of Zero, and they also stop by Zero's mom's place, and Quinlan just like busts down the door of his mom's house, and she's like, "Who's gonna pay for my door?" Like, knock. You could have just knocked.
Yeah, it does make me wonder, of all the emotions the Jedi are not supposed to feel, I'm not quite sure why vanity seems to be tolerated quite so much. But, well, yeah, Riki, definitely do tell us what you find in that novel, because I also found it fascinating. I also just thought it was so interesting to me that to me we realized we haven't had an Obi-Wan episode really in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we got a lot of Satine in our last chunk of episodes. But we Satine asked for some Obi-Wan, but never actually got him.
Yeah, and I think it's something why I'm really enjoying this season is have we had a single like we're on a planet and watching droids and clones fight each other for the whole episode?
No, there's been like
they attacked Camino.
Yeah, there's been like bits,
but that was very clone centric.
We did get the clone at the very beginning, the like following the ARC troopers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I feel like this one, we're much more on the home front. We're much more like not just on the battlefield all the time, which I'm really enjoying it.
That's good because I think, especially in season 1, I noticed that there was a little too much extended pew-pew scenes of that. Yeah. Where it's just like 20 to 30 seconds of shooting, and that's all there is.
Yeah. I really like these episodes, like especially these two. They're just like so fun. They're like the action adventure-y bits of Star Wars that I love. There's like a little bit of craziness, wacky adventures, and like we didn't have a lot of Jedi interaction in either of them, even though Obi-Wan was a little more prominent in the second half. But yeah, it was just like it's just fun, and I love it.
Yeah. All right, so now we get into I think 2 of my absolute favorite episodes. So I'm sensing we have some differences on here, and that's totally fine. It starts with I think a very interesting name, given the way that this phrase came to be used later. Heroes on both sides. Here they mean it somewhat unironically. Actually, I just caught what this is a reference to. And I should have known this because I have made fun of it. In the third prequel, Revenge of the Sith, in the opening scrawl, it's talking about how bad the Clone Wars are. And one of the things it says is, that there's terrible battles, there's tragedies, there's victories, there's heroes on both sides. And I remember watching that being like, are there? These movies never tell us anything about separatist heroes. But so I want, that name has to be a reference to that. But anyway, so in the first part, when the Senate begins debate on a bill that would eliminate government oversight of the banking clan's activities, Padme and Ahsoka travel in secret to the capital of the Confederacy of Independent Systems in an attempt to forge a peace agreement with the Separatists. However, after both the Republic and Separatists agree to have a peace conference, Dooku orders General Grievous to dispatch a group of droids to launch a terrorist attack on Coruscant, resulting in the failure of peace. And then in the second episode, Pursuit of Peace, Senators Padma Amidala, Bail Organa, and Oraconda Farr push against a new bill in the Senate to buy new clones to the Republic. It's the same bill because the point is they want to deregulate the banks so that the banks can loan them the money so that they can buy more clones to continue the war. So all this really is about, do we continue the war or not, with the looming war profiteering over it. But someone does not like the opposition and tries to dissuade them. And there's all sorts of hijinks trying to keep the different people alive and make the Senate deals. And eventually Padme makes a wonderful speech and everything turns out okay. So yeah, what's your all take on these episodes?
Well, I think, again, we should note, like, this is out of chronology. And
Yep.
these episodes take place right before the episode where Uncle Ono gets assassinated. And this is the bill that he's assassinated for. Basically.
Oh, that's right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Because he's in this episode, which is a nice clue that it's taking place beforehand. Again, I still wish that we would get some sort of context with these. Like, you can go look it up online, but it's weird watching it and not being able to, like, place yourself for the first little bit.
Yeah, somehow, like, I think I must have not been paying much attention because I wound up thinking that the Cad Bane plan was connected to freeing Zero, and I hadn't realized that he was stealing the plans for his later attack, and that the Zero episode was actually not connected to that. So,
well, it kind of was, right? Like, so when he attacks the Senate, he gets Zero out of the Senate, and then brings them.
Oh yeah, that's right. So there is a connection there. It's just a lot.
Yeah, it's
there's
like
one
back
episode in the middle
too. Yeah, there's an episode in the middle that we watched a long time ago. Mm-hmm. That kind of ties it together a little more neatly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the episode where Anakin gives his lightsaber to Padme to prove how much he loves her, and then has to fight.
Show you how much I love you. Take my lightsaber.
And he has to fight Cad Bane's minions, San's lightsaber.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that episode.
But anyway, yeah. For these episodes, what were your thoughts?
Oh man, who doesn't love fiscal responsibility and banking plans and interest rates?
I love political machinations, and this is full of them because the whole thing, like, this is the stuff that didn't make sense when you watch the movies, when you watch the prequels. Like, why are they fighting? Like, why are the Separatists evil? It's because Sidious and Dooku are playing both sides and keeping them at arm's length and doing these things like, sending transformer robots in to blow up the power plant and assassinating key figures in the Separatists who are interested in peace. And they're doing this to their own people right under their noses.
Yeah,
and then blaming the other side.
Yeah, I found these episodes to be, I think, some of my favorite, in part because, like you said, that they explain so much, and I just feel like they're so relevant, because what they're really getting into, and I've talked about this before, but I think here especially, and the war profiteering point, they're being fairly heavy-handed about, to be sure, but just this whole idea about the way people can get sort of stirred up into hating the enemy in a way that totally dehumanizes them. Mm-hmm. And I thought there were just so many beautiful moments, like early in the Senate debate, when Padme is even suggesting some kind of negotiation. One of the other senators says, you can't negotiate with these animals.
And that senator is literally an animal. He's like goat-headed or something like similar. Right.
And then when Ahsoka, they wind up going to a planet on which some of these separatists are, one of the separatist planets. And they seem to be totally reasonable people who have their own ideas, and they think the Republic is corrupt and screwed up, and they want to be part of it. And clearly they've bought a little bit of the propaganda too. But I love that Ahsoka is just so shocked. And Ahsoka realizes how much she has bought into all of this.
Yeah.
And she says at one point, as she is, I'm glad they didn't go anywhere with it, but I think there's supposed to be a little bit of flirtation with her and the son of the senator on the other side.
Oh,
and she says,
come back?
What'd you say?
Do they never come back?
Well, I mean,
I thought there was some follow-up.
Maybe with him, but not the family. Keep talking, Matthew. Sorry.
Yeah. But she winds up saying in this just voice of just kind of shock and wonder, "You're a separatist?"
Yeah.
Which I thought was so good because it's all about, like, she has in her mind this idea of the separatists as being, evil and terrible, and she's so shocked to be like, a normal person could just believe this.
Yeah, well, and so it's Padme's friend who's a separatist, who, like, she seems to have a couple of friends on not the Republic side, right? Mm-hmm. Like, she's got Satine, and then it's Mina Bonteri, who she goes to see this time. And even in that speech where I think they said you can't negotiate with these animals, or maybe in a later speech, they're accusing Padme of being a traitor for, like, oh, or do you have separatist friends?
Yeah.
Yes, we all do. They were our friends until like 2 years ago.
Yeah. But so they go there, and it's Ahsoka's getting all uppity with Bontari's son. Like, oh, do you think all Jedi are evil? And he retorts like, oh, do you think all Separatists are evil? So it is nice that we get to see heroes on both sides, right? Like, these are just people being played, and like, we're positioned to think that the Republic are the good guys, but we also know that like the Republic is run by the ultimate bad guy, and very quickly becomes the bad guys. So this idea of like, who really are the good guys and who really are the bad guys, and is there something quite as like clean cut as good guy v bad guy?
Yeah,
really interesting.
Ahsoka ends that first episode by saying, politics of this war are not as black and white as I once thought they were. And it's a little on the nose, but I really like that statement, and especially for a kid's show. I thought it was a really nice way of being like, these questions are a lot more complex than you thought they were.
So this is one of those things where we've talked about how the Clone Wars TV show helps flesh out the stuff that the prequel movies don't really deal with. And sometimes that's good. I think this episode had a lot of good stuff. But it also makes some of the movie things not make sense. And what I mean is, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Sidious sends his new apprentice, Darth Vader, to Mustafar to kill the leaders of the Separatists, right?
Right.
And it's mostly like the people we've seen in the movies. Like the Neimoidians and the...
Someone from the Techno Union and the Geonosians,
And this episode shows us that there's so much more than that. That there are actually, senators, like a whole government, a ruling council, and it's not just like a bunch of, as you call them, mustache twirlers in a room.
Yeah, there seems to be this conceit in the and that movie seems to say that like we're winning more of the war and that we're winning more of these battles, but it seems the war is far from over. And there's just a sense of if we kill we'll kill Count Dooku, we'll kill General Grievous, and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's not as much that this makes those not make sense. It's that never made sense, and this is trying to be like, yeah, okay, we're gonna retcon that and try to make it a little more sense, and kind of ignore the dumb writing from those other movies.
Yeah.
But you're right; it doesn't really fully line up. Just a couple other things that I thought were really interesting here. Yeah, I think you mentioned the idea like the traitor, the idea that like just having sympathy for the other side or imagining the other side means that you're a traitor. There was one line at one point also. Her friend says, unlike the Republic, corporations do not control us. And I thought that line was so interesting because, like, on the one hand, it's really good that they're pointing out that the Republic is basically a tool of the corporations at this point. Yeah. But isn't the Separatists completely controlled by, like, the banking clan and the trade unions and all these people?
Yeah, I mean, it seems a little, like, bit of a Hippocratic statement. But, I mean, this whole bill being pushed forth, it's like the senator from Camino, who's the one who's going to take the money and make the clones, is like, y'all should make some more clones. I vote we make more clones. Let's vote we make more clones. And the banking clan is like, I vote we deregulate the bank. Let's deregulate the bank. Everybody, I vote.
Yeah.
So it just seems like there are these two major corporations who are clearly like, I vote you let us take a bunch of money, and I vote that you give us all that money.
Yeah, they're not being very subtle.
No, and no one's like calling them out on it. They're just like, maybe we should get some more clone troopers.
Yeah. They're not. It's not subtle at all. And if you're listening to this anywhere close to when we recorded in August of 2020, like these all seem like gross violations of the Hatch Act.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll be honest. I remember watching it, and being like, "Come on, no government would ever allow that." You know,
yeah.
How many times? Go ahead.
Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say. I do like. There's one point. One of the senators, Padme, is arguing against making more clones, partly because like we don't have the money for that, but also do we really just want to keep throwing them away to be killed? And one of the senators is like, yeah, that's what we're making them for.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I think that's a really interesting point, because, like,
yep,
it kind of is what they're making them for. Like, I get what he's saying, but if you're doing that, like, why not just use droids? And in the next episode, the crawl for the next episode, they refer to... So, okay, at the end of this episode, there's these little cleaner bots that come in, but whoopsie, they're not cleaner bots. They transform into, like, bomb robots, and they blow up part of the Senate. And then everyone's freaking out, and they pass this emergency bill.
Right.
And in the crawl for the next episode, Pursuit of Peace, the announcer, voiceover guy, refers to it as a suicide bombing. And, like...
That was weird.
Yeah, right? Like, would you have given those robots sentience if you knew that that was what they were gonna do? Is it a suicide bombing if, like, that's their job? Like, if that's what they were built to do? And I think there's, like, some interesting parallels there with the clones, because they are being manufactured as weapons of war.
Mm. Well, and I think we've talked a lot in the last couple seasons about how one of the central parts of this story seems to be, you know, what happens to the Jedi when they're made to send into battle and death these clones where their moral value is not quite clear. Like, are they living beings? Are they bred for war? Should they be allowed to leave the war? And I like now getting to see how those questions are playing out on the home front. You know, that the senators are falling to the same kind of ideas. Because like you said, it's like, if you can pay for something, if basically you're like, I am going to buy this tool to use to fight a war. In your head, now that's a tool. It's not a living thing. And of course they are, you know, and like, I think that's, in some ways, it's also meant to be kind of a commentary on the way that, you know, the senators and Congress people thought about the army, you know, and I remember there's some really good articles that were being written around the time this came out about, you know, you had a Congress that was almost entirely white people ordering an army that was almost entirely like black and Latino people into fighting, and, you know, what value did they place on that?
Yeah, and like these senators probably have never interacted with clones before, right? So they don't get to know like Fives and Cody and Cutout. They just see them as like the tools that we have bought for war. Yeah,
they probably don't even know they all have names and personalities like that. In terms of the suicide bombing point, I thought was interesting. I think it does seem to me like they were trying very hard to keep drawing parallels, and I think they just called it a suicide bombing because they wanted to connect it to all the suicide bombings that were happening at the time.
Sure, yeah.
And this kind of, like, in some ways, I don't think this is what they were meaning to say, but I think there's something interesting about the idea that they're saying people faked a terrorist attack in order to justify all of this war. Mm. And this was happening at the time that the 9/11 conspiracy people, who were saying the exact same thing happened here, that the 9/11 attack was faked in order to justify the war, were, like, at their height. I don't think they were trying to support that. But
yeah. Well, like, for 9/11, like, the U.S. didn't even invade the country that attacked them, right? Didn't they invade, like, a different country? Am I right? Sorry. Well, I need to remind everybody that I'm Canadian.
We're not going to get into this.
We're not going to get into this? Okay.
We first invaded Afghanistan, which is where the Taliban was based, and then we invaded Iraq for no reason whatsoever.
Okay.
But yes, exactly.
Cool. Thank you for catching up your Canadian pal. But yeah, and then also at the end, like, Dooku, so the Separatists have attacked the Republican Senate, blown up a, control room down there.
Power station.
Yeah, and there were, like, people, and there was, like, a dude who, like, grabs his buddy's gun and, like, tries to save himself but can't. Anyway, okay, that's where the power goes out. They're not in the Senate building. They just, like, hit a power grid. I get it now. Okay, Anyway. And then, like, Dooku pops up in the hologram in the Republic Senate and is like, you Republicans have just attacked us. We withdraw our peace treaty. Like, wouldn't they know? Wouldn't they know that they didn't send people to go attack them? Or are they just like, oh, I guess we attacked them? Like, wouldn't that be like really easy to vet? Like, hey, Dooku, we didn't attack you.
Well, I think that's the point. I think, and I thought they say this. I think that they know that, and so that to them this is clear that this was all just a trick, and that Dooku is completely lying and just pulling strings.
Okay, that makes
sense.
Sense.
There's also just, it would have to go through like subcommittees. Like, the full Senate is not going to know every single battle plan or every single assassination attempt.
Yeah, that's fair.
And there again, like, how often does the military lie to its citizens about what it is or isn't doing?
Sure.
And
Sure.
but that same debate probably happened on the other side when they were like, the senators and the separatists were like, no, we didn't blow up your power station. What are you talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. That is part of what's going on, is that Dooku is lying to the Separatist Council.
Yeah.
Or the Confederate Council.
Sheev is lying to the Republicans.
Yeah. And, like, all the stuff that Grievous is doing, like, no one in their government knows about all that.
Right.
I do like that we get to see that, Palpatine's blue friend. I don't know what his name is. He's, like, hanging out
the
with
one
him
who's,
at
like, the
Senate.
assistant. Yeah.
Yeah, is, like, clearly in on it, which is neat. Because, he's just, like, it's frustrating.
What is his name?
This is into the next episode. I don't know if we're ready to...
Yeah.
Well, they're, like, the same.
Yeah, I think we're talking all about this as one plot. There's one thing, though, that bothered me about all this, and again, I know, like, we're not going for heavy-level political machinations, but it has been proven over and over and over again that if you want to stop a political movement, killing the leader of that movement is the worst thing you can do, because all you do is make them a martyr. And I feel like if Padme had been killed for trying to bring peace, like, of course people are going to rally to her cause if that happens. It's just a small thing, and I think I brought it up before, but it's always like, you don't, this doesn't work. This is a dumb theory.
Yeah, and even, so, in the next episode, turns out, like, senators are getting beat up to discourage them, or, like, to encourage them from voting.
Where's the security?
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, there's one scene that I like, and Riki pointed it out to me, where Padme and her gang are, like, asking some senators to vote against the bill. They're like, my friends and I have made up our mind. And then they walk away, and it shows that they're all, like, bandaged up. So
one of them has an arm in a splint, another one is, like, holding his side, like, he got punched.
Yeah, so clearly, like, they've been beaten up and told, vote for this bill, pass this bill. So I think, like, that's interesting. And even when, so they end up, Bail Organa is the one who's supposed to make this impassioned speech about not defunding the banks and not voting for this bill. Right. But he ends up getting, like, hit by a car, and I think it's just, like, some of the goons who are out, punching people, beating them up, telling them to not vote for this bill. I don't think they're trying to kill him. They're just trying to, like, rough him up a bit as well. And he just ends up getting, like, more wounded than he should. And then, like, even when Uncle Ono dies, it's, like, isn't it his assistant? Because she's just, like, sick of him being a jerk. Like, they're not actually... it's
not even about the politics. It's something about what's going on their home planet.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, so, killing martyrs, etc. That was a bunch of words about that.
Okay.
Sorry. But yeah, I don't know. The second episode bothers me more than the first one.
It was very negotiated. It was very much like people in smoky rooms talking about politics.
Well, like, one of the first lines that is said so dramatically is, like, it's Bail and Padme and Ona, and they're all chilling in the room, and Bail's like, quick, someone go find out the interest rates that the bank is offering. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, interest rates, woo, woo, let's go, action adventure. Turns out it's very high.
25%.
That's a lot. That's a high interest rate. Maybe you shouldn't have defunded the bank. Deregulated, not defunded. Sorry.
That is all totally legitimate. And I meant that, I always talk about how I want the movie to be Captain America and Iron Man having diplomatic negotiations over exactly what the Sokovia Accords would be.
Sure.
And I think this kind of proves why they don't make that movie. Because I would be very happy with it. Maybe Riki or like 10 other people would be very happy with it. And no one would pay to go see it in the theaters. But yeah, because I just loved everything about it. But I can understand why this is not what most people want to watch when they want to watch Star Wars.
Fair. I also Padme really bugged me in this, and I get that this is earlier Padme, so she's not as, like, self-confident, self-assured. This is, the speech she ends up giving at the end is, like, her first big speech, and she's, like, panicking about not being able to be a great orator. And we later find out that, like, she turns into a super great orator. But, I she's like in her chambers chatting with like her handmaid. And her handmaid's like, oh, well, you actually talk to people, the common people, like me, who directly works with you every day. And then she's like, you're right, I do talk to you. Tell me more about your family and how your family is suffering. I can use this for my own political machinations.
This was so bad.
It was so bad. And then, like...
It was a bad speech.
It was a bad speech. Well, so then like, her handmaid is like giving her a new elaborate headdress. And she goes out and makes a speech about how her handmaid is like so poor that she doesn't have electricity. And like her kids can't study at night. Can't take a bath. You know, they're so impoverished. And it's like, pay her more, Padme.
Yeah.
My headdress
let's cut your headdress budget as well while we're at it. Like,
sell 2 of your dresses out of 300 and you can pay for her rent for a year, you know?
Yeah, right? Like, we need to take care of our citizens is definitely a good reason why we shouldn't take out massive loans and buy more clones. But also, maybe, and I'm going to start this initiative by taking some austerity measures myself instead of throwing elaborate parties with ridiculously expensive fruitcakes. Right? Like...
Yeah, it's one of those times where I feel like the show is trying to have it a couple of different ways. Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of, you know, when they clearly wanted to say, okay, the first movies had a princess, and so these movies are going to have a queen, and she's going to be even more beautiful and even more incredible dresses, and look, the little girls are going to go so crazy for this. But we don't like monarchy, so she's democratically elected.
Yeah.
What?
And I mean, like, to be fair, I do go crazy for her outfits. I mean, like, Padme's got a good look. I love all her wacky headdresses. But if her handmaid is, like, literally can't afford electricity, maybe this is not where we should be allotting our budget.
Yeah, I think that's fair. One little moment that I really loved from all the, like, political machinations was there's at one point where they're talking to the senator who is at first kind of very hesitant, but he's sort of seen as the one who Padme's speech like wins him over, and I think it's kind of he's supposed to be the representative of a lot of them. And at one point he's saying that like he kind of acknowledges that maybe they're right, but I forget the exact wording, but he basically says that like, it's that they're talking about the war, and Padme is saying like you're letting your fear control you. You're acting out of fear because all this fear has been generated by the Separatists that you're just acting out of that instead of stopping and thinking. Mm-hmm. And basically what it shows is that, like, it's right, and he kind of knows that, but he can't just admit. Like, I mean, that would be really hard for him to admit, I have been fearful all this time, and that's why I'm going to change my vote. And I thought that was a really interesting way of showing, like, how once you start to go down that path, wow, it's the dark side all over again. Like, once you start to go down that path of, like, letting fear control you, it's really hard to stop because you have to admit things to yourself that you really don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah, owning up to stuff is hard. And I think, like, that's... I mean, like, not just in the world of Star Wars, right? And it's, like... Proving someone wrong is really the way to get them on your side, because then they have to, like, admit that they're wrong in, like, this big mea culpa sort of moment. Whereas if you can, like... maybe more quietly present them with facts to get them on your side instead of like shaming them or beating them up into voting your way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The only other point I'll give there is that there's one last moment where there's a chase scene that doesn't make too much sense. And we do have... Did one of those assassins sound just like Donald Duck to you? Because I heard Donald Duck and it did not make me happy.
It's like the moist assassin. Is that who you're talking about?
The fish?
The shorter of the two.
Yeah. So there's like... We've seen these dudes before. They're assassins. They crop up. I think they were part of the like plot to like get into the Senate a little while ago that we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the fishy guy. No, they weren't? Or just shaking his head.
There was a fish... The fish was the one who stole Ahsoka's lightsaber, but it was a different fish.
Right.
Oh, okay. But yeah, they do talk in like a Donald Duck. Moist is the only like word, and all the uncomfortable associations that come with it. Like, yeah, it's a very unpleasant voice, but it seems to fit his character perfectly. Like he looks like he's always kind of sticky, and you're never sure why. And he talks with like that like squeaky. Like he's got too much spit in his mouth for some reason, kind of. Yeah. He's an uncomfortable character. And yes, hover bikes make no gosh darn sense. why? What happens if your hover car breaks down? You just plummet. And also, again, the police surround Padme just on one plane.
Two-dimensionally.
She could have easily flown up or down to get away.
Well, but what got me here was, okay, we keep hearing how corrupt the Senate is, how corrupt the Republic is. Yet she is screaming to these police people, "I'm a senator, go arrest these other people."
Yeah.
And they don't care.
They're like,
and
you stole this bike.
You know, if you could tell me that in our world, the senator, if a senator stole a bike and the police wouldn't be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Senator, of course, go." I'd be like, sure, give me that world. Because I think in this world, our world's a lot more corrupt than theirs.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's weird, because she does just, push a dude off his bike, steal it, start driving around, stabs it a couple times.
Well, you can't just take someone's word for it when they scream, "I'm a senator."
I'm a senator. But,
you
yeah,
have
and I
to
guess
at least
she's
show
not,
some ID.
really well recognized yet. She hasn't given a fancy speech.
There's too many
That's
people
true.
in the Senate.
There's a lot of people.
You can't know everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is weird. The fact, and she's also screaming they're trying to assassinate me. These two people are trying to assassinate me, and they're like, "Nah, you stole this bike thing." Yeah, it doesn't seem like a very effective security system on Coruscant. Yeah. And I feel like it's nice that it's consistently terrible, right? Like we get that bad detective cropping up every few episodes.
And it's weird because I think what they're trying to say is that it's because it's Coruscant and no one ever invades Coruscant and everything is so totally safe and fine. But then we're also constantly being told about the huge criminal underworld on Coruscant. So
it's
weird. Just go down 10 levels.
Yeah. But I think that is one of the points that in the previous episode they make, right? No one's going to expect an attack on Coruscant. Coruscant hasn't been attacked in 100 years or however long it's been. And then the upper levels, nobody expects it. But the criminal underbelly, a few floors down. Mm-hmm. And even then, are the cops doing an amazing job on the lower levels of Coruscant? Probably not. They're probably not the least corrupt folks around.
Probably not. Well, all right. So we had a pretty exciting... often there's episodes where we're just kind of meh about. I don't think there was any here. I think we had different feelings on them, but everyone really liked. For each one of these had at least one person really liking them, and with some of them, I think even the ones that weren't our personal favorites, we all kind of found some good things in. And even just talking about it more, I found I liked Gangster the Hutt a lot better.
Yes.
But any other kind of final words before we wrap up?
Well, this episode, the end, you mentioned it. Chancellor Palpatine has, one of his best individual scenes in the entire series. After the Senate votes against the bill, so he's lost, right, politically. And he's standing in his office with his assistant, whose name is Mas Ameda, I guess, because I don't think it's ever been said on screen. But he's the tall blue guy with horns who holds the staff, and it's always standing next to him. And basically, Palpatine just Sidious's it up while in his Chancellor's office. He's like, "It's fine. We lost this battle, but we will still take advantage of this situation." And he does. Losing this bill politically and not getting the additional clones actually benefits him in the long run. Oh, yeah. Because the Republic army becomes so thinned out. Mm-hmm. And it forces the Jedi to commit more to the battle. Yeah. I think it's very true. With the few resources that they have and become more brutal rather than just kind of overwhelm the Separatists with your massive army. You have to take more risks. You have to put more lives in danger, in potentially dangerous battles. So he absolutely does turn this around. And for me, this character, Moss, it's one of the great missed opportunities. I don't know if there's anything out there a good comic book or a novel, but he's always there. Yeah. Right? He's been there since the beginning.
Well, it says, he was even there... you might know this. I haven't seen the prequels in a hot minute. But, like, he was there with Chancellor Valorum? Like,
Yeah.
he was Valorum's right-hand man?
So Valorum was the original Chancellor in Phantom Menace who was voted out in a vote of no confidence through Palpatine's manipulations. So he is actually a holdover, like, assistant to the Chancellor.
Mm-hmm.
But ends up working for Palpatine. I assume ends up, like, knowing everything and being a co-conspirator, because by his backstory is by the end of it all, by the end of the Empire, he is actually the Emperor or possibly the Chancellor. Like, he controls the Empire after Palpatine dies at Endor.
What?
Oh, interesting.
Which is stunning, because at that point the Empire has become a human supremacist organization and has basically like driven out all aliens. So for Palpatine to keep him on as his assistant that long, and for him to still retain that much authority and power, is impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So give me a movie about him, or a TV show.
I'd love to know more about him. I like the point you made, though, and I hadn't really thought about this, but I think this episode shows this. The one thing I haven't liked is sometimes it feels like, you know, the whole, like, everything is proceeding as I have foreseen it, and that, like, every single thing that happens is exactly what Sidious planned, and it's all part of his master plan. and eventually you sort of, like, there has to be some degree of the characters having agency and things not going his way. And I prefer the kind of idea you're talking about, where it's like, yeah, he's not in control of everything, and sometimes things don't go quite his way, but he's always got a backup plan. He always has an idea of, like, okay, we're going to put this into motion, and I hope it goes this way, but if it doesn't, I'll do this other thing, and then I can do this thing, and, like, he's just always 5 moves ahead, even though he doesn't know exactly what the other guy's move is going to be.
Yeah, like, he knows the end goal.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like, the plan of Sheev Palpatine, like, Homeboy is playing the long game, right? Like, it takes him, 30 years or so to actually go from, like, Senator of Naboo to Emperor of the dark side of the Republic.
I mean, if you start at the Phantom Menace, but it goes back even farther than that.
Like, becoming Senator of Naboo was probably all part of his long con.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, there's a novel, Darth Plagueis, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's very good, and it definitely shows that he has been, to some extent, on this path since he was very young. Certainly that he became aware of the dark side at a very young age and has been plotting for, you know, power. The exact directions it takes is something that evolves over time.
You know,
yeah.
say what you will about Palpatine. Like, I don't know what I'm doing 6 months from now. Okay.
You got to respect a man with a plan, you know? Anyway, thank you guys. This was a great episode as always. Fans, what'd you all think? What were your favorite moments? What do you think of the star-crossed lovers? Did you love all the political machinations? Were you bored silly? Do you want to know more about the interest rates of the galactic banking clans? Let us know. You can find us on email at StarWarsUniversePodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at Star Wars Universe Podcast. Or you can find us on Twitter at SWU Podcast. And all those links are going to be on our webpage. And the easiest way to find that is by going to the Stranded Panda Network, strandedpanda.com, and just clicking on the icon of the two microphones crossed as lightsabers in front of the Rebellion screen, and it'll clearly say Star Wars Universe Podcast. While you're there, also please check out some of the other great podcasts we have on the Stranded Panda Podcast Network. Lots of great things going on there. A lot of good things happening on PandaVision. We're doing all sorts of things about new TV shows that have come out. We just finished a run of Umbrella Academy. My partner Matthew Carroll is doing a thing with a good friend of his about Lovecraft Country. That's been really enjoyable so far. And starting September 4th, The Boys will come back, and myself, Jeff, and Matt will all be back to talk about The Boys Season 2. So very excited for that. Please check out all those podcasts. And on behalf of myself and everybody else, have a great day.